time for Hobby Quick Hits. A sports card podcast where we tackle the hobby's hottest topics in depth to help you navigate the sports card landscape and enjoy the hobby we all love. Here's your host, John Newman.
Welcome to another edition of Hobby Quick Hits. The title of this episode, The Hobby is the People, possibly sounds familiar to you. It's the tagline to our older brother show, Sports Card Nation. Comes out on Fridays, interview show. And when I came up with that tagline, I get asked that a lot about that. Like, how did I come up with it? And there's no real crazy story. I just, thought about my career, if you will, in the hobby and all the stories and people along the way. And we all have those stories and different people in the hobby that mean a lot to us or different moments. And so that's where the Hobby's the People tagline came from. But I wanted to do an episode, a shorter episode on this show rather than Sports Card Nation, where not an origin story. I did that. Dr. Beckett did that on his podcast with me, but kind of talking about sort of my journey and my hobby and giving those folks along the way the proper credit and where that Hobby of the People came from for me. And so that's what this show is going to be about. It's probably not going to be super long, but I wanted to sort of do a hats off episode, if you will. So with that being said, we're going to hear from our great sponsor, Mojo Breaks, and we'll be right back to start the episode after that. Hey folks, wanted to tell you about the best place to get some of your sealed sports card wax products. Great selection and some of the lowest prices on the web. MojoBreakShop.com is that place. Whether it's a box or a whole case, they're your guys, and they ship around the world right to your door. The Mojo Break name is one of the most trusted in the hobby. From sports cards to Pokemon, their selection can't be beat. They offer daily deals and pre-orders. Who won first place at this year's Topps Rip Party? None other than Mojo Break. Their prices are already great, but here's a way to save even more money. Use the code QUICKHITS, that's QUICKHITS, for 10% off anything on MojoBreakShop.com. They also have a full-service card shop in Santa Clara, California. So if you're in the area, stop by. They're open 7 days a week, so check them out at MojoBreakShop.com. So I've wore different hats in the hobby. Started at 7 years old with my first baseball pack in Brooklyn, New York. Then, traded with my friends. I want to give a shout out to them. Brian and Joseph were my two probably best friends that I collected cards with in my single digit years, if you will. And then I started going to a card store called Seventh Inning Stretch. It was owned by a gentleman named Rudy Backstein, and I went there. I was 12, 13 years old. I was there almost every day, and was there so much that Rudy said to me, why don't you, I should hire you. I could use the extra help, and you're here so much anyway. I'll give you half cash and half store credit. And it wound up, I spent not only the store credit, but probably what I got paid cash. Most of my job was putting cards in order, sleeving some, putting vintage in binders, and making Munster boxes. Then my role expanded to Rudy did shows, and so I worked at shows for Rudy. And when I was at the show, I would sell some cards out of the cases, help him out there, and also make some Munster boxes at the show. I got a sort of skill to make Munster boxes rather quickly in a rapid fashion. And he hated to make those things, and so it became my job. And I wanted just to get done with it, So the quicker I did it, the quicker I was done with it and could sell cards and sort of do that interaction and whatnot. Now, I was a shy kid, believe it or not, so I didn't do a lot of conversating with people. I mean, I spoke to Rudy because I knew him, but if I didn't know you real well, I was sort of kind of quiet and shy, but still, good at math and knew how to do those sort of transactions. And it was Rudy that really kind of got me into the business side, if you will, of the hobby. And many of my friends, Brian and Joseph that I mentioned, were like, man, you've got quite a collection now from working at the store, what you already had. You should do shows yourself. And so I did. I've told this story, so I won't go into all the details again, but I started doing shows. And Rudy, I had to tell Rudy that I was going to do my own shows and not work for him anymore. He wasn't very happy about it. I'll just put it that way. And for about a year, I sort of got the cold shoulder, evil eye, if you will. After that year, he came up to me at the show and, extended his hand to shake my hand and apologized. And accepted that apology. And we started setting up at these shows together. I did my first show at 15. And so I want to give out a shout out to Rudy because he was the guy that gave me my start. I learned a lot of business acumen from him. I was in the store working when a lot of those transactions took place. I learned how to while I was shy, I still learned how to interact with people and that sort of thing. So, if it probably wasn't for Rudy, I probably wouldn't be where I am in the hobby today, quite frankly. Maybe not even in the hobby. Another person I want to give out a shout out to is my grandfather, Pasquale Capobianco. That first pack I talked about was a 1979 Topps baseball pack, and he actually bought me a few packs that day from the corner store in Brooklyn. And if it wasn't for me seeing the packs on the counter and me asking my grandfather about it, if he would have just kind of said, no, you can't have them, maybe this story has a different ending. But he said, hey, I'll buy you a couple packs. Do you want them? And I did, and the rest is history. There's a lot of people I started doing shows with and setting up with. I can't name them all, but those folks that I set up with at shows from the age of 15 to 20. I appreciate all the conversations that we had about life, not just hobby, but about life as well. I was a young kid, obviously 15, 16, 17, 18, 19 years old. I learned a lot, not just about the hobby, but about life from the people I set up with, which were always older than me at that time. I was a very young dealer. I met a gentleman named Angelo Barnello in that show circuit. He was local with me, and we sort of just kind of half-jokingly talked about opening a store together. And then one day he called me up. We were on those terms. He called me up, said, hey, I found this location. It's on the second floor, but the rent is a great deal. I know we kind of batted around the store. What about doing it? What about kind of taking just talk and making it reality? And I said, let me think about it. I said, we need a lot of stuff. We need a cash register. We need showcases, some other things, and it's going to add up. And so we crunched the numbers. We went to look at the location. It wasn't a big store. It was on the second floor, and we could put out an A-frame to draw attention where we were. I was a little concerned about the location, but the rent was a really good deal. This was 1992. I was 20 years old now. Now, Angelo, who became my partner in the store, was about 12 years older than me. I believe he was around 32 when I was 20. And so we started kind of figuring things out, what stuff may cost us, and we decided to take this plunge together. And I worked part-time, and initially I continued to work part-time just to build up sort of a war chest to buy some of the things we needed, from splitting the cost of brand new showcase, some showcases, cash register. We had to put some shelving up. Obviously, we had to buy wax, get some of the accounts I had already with the card companies, and then we had to get new ones. There were some that you had to have an actual storefront to get online with them. There were others that, as long as you were a dealer and had a tax number, they'd sell to you and send it to your house. And so we got all this stuff streamlined. The first year we spent more than we made, and there was almost not a second year. I want to give a shout out to Angelo's wife, Marie Barnello. She was sort of our accountant. She wasn't, classically trained, but she knew what to do and helped us out when it came to some financial stuffs. And, didn't get paid other than the fact that Angelo owned half of the business. But, that first year was rough, and then we sat down and had to decide if there was going to be a second year. And we decided, hey, we're going to give it one more year. And that second year was a huge one, and lasted about 6 years for me until I sold out my half to my partner. Make a longer story short, about 3 months after I sold out to him, the store was burglarized. They just stole money but destroyed a lot of glass, and that was the end of the store. And if memory serves me right, me and Angelo kind of drifted apart, not because we were mad, just kind of, I think he sort of got out of cards. I think he sold all his stuff and never looked back. And so we sort of fell out of touch, but wanted to mention him sort of in my hobby journey because he is a big part of it. Then I did a lot of show circuit around the Northeast, New York State, Pennsylvania, I didn't go to Massachusetts, Connecticut, did that sort of 3 to 4 state show. I remember I did some Philly shows. Another guy I did shows with at this point, he kind of traveled with me, and we kind of split tables, was a gentleman named Dave Hayes. He was a few years older than me, but I was in the hobby longer, and I sort of mentored him and helped him sort of build his business up, so to speak. And so we did shows for a couple years. Then I really went sort of exclusively online as eBay really became super popular. And so I did that kind of on my own there. And then, podcast, fast forward to many years later, podcasting became big, and I sought out some, sports card podcasts. But at this time, there was very, very few. And the one I really kind of gravitated to was one you probably heard of called Fat Packs with Eric Norton. And listened to it a lot when I was traveling to New York a few times a year to visit family. My son would be usually in that car with me making that trip. And my son, Jordan, who at the time was probably 12, 13, 14 years old, who knew my hobby history, said, Dad, have you ever thought of doing a podcast? And we would binge listen to, Fat Packs. We both enjoyed it. And I said, yeah, I thought about it, but never really did anything. but really appreciated what Eric did. Another gentleman I want to mention, Dan Tortora, a friend of mine, who was working for ESPN Radio in Orlando, Florida. Had some issues with ESPN. He wound up resigning and moving back here to Syracuse and started his own broadcasting company. I went over there on a Friday to do a segment that kind of tied in the sports card hobby and sports. It was supposed to be a 1 week only for an hour segment, one time only, and it became for 15 weeks in every Friday show. It's called Collectible Corner. And the only reason it stopped was I was off on Fridays from my job I had at the time, and that changed. I didn't have Fridays off anymore. And so that was what launched Sports Card Nation. I had an affinity to doing that. I thought I did a halfway decent job on my appearances, and I sort of missed talking about cards on a radio show. And so Sports Card Nation was born. So I'd be remiss if I didn't thank Dan Tortora for kind of proving to me that I could do it. So I started Sports Card Nation, and one of the first guys that I reached out to was Eric Norton, someone I considered the OG. I've coined him the Podfather, if you will. And I reached out to him, and was very helpful to me in my podcasting journey. And I got to know him real well. And sort of to kind of button this all up, now we're 3 years into the podcast. I've met a lot of other content creators, some that came after me. It doesn't matter whether someone came after me or not. We're all in this kind of fraternity together. Most of them, not all of them, are very friendly folks that will help each other out. There's too many to name individually, so I just will kind of just, say generically that all the people that I've met along the way in content creation, we bounced off, whether talking about equipment, how we do our shows individually, very important in this journey. And then I want to mention, not again generically, all the people that I've met as well, from shows to the 2 nationals that I've been to recently, that have come up to me, and whether they've come up to me in person or send a DM or an email saying what the shows meant to them or they enjoyed the shows. That's the stuff that keeps me going in this hobby journey. I've done this a long time. I still enjoy it. The hobby's a lot different hobby today than it was in 1979 when I got my start as a 7-year-old. This hobby's a lot different today than the 20-year-old in 1992 that launched the store, the LCS, with his partner Angelo. I wanted to mention and sort of go through this kind of quickly. I didn't want to draw it out any longer than I had to, but mention these folks because all these folks and all these stories along the way have led me to where I am today in the hobby. Not just in content creation, but in the hobby. As a seller, I still do card shows. I still sell online, but I really also enjoy the content creation and sharing knowledge and experiences, much like I'm doing on this very episode. So to those folks I mentioned, thank you for whatever your role was, big or small. For everyone that's interacted with me to say the show's great or you enjoy it. And even the ones that said, hey, I didn't like that segment or I didn't like that episode. Thankfully, there's less of those than I enjoy the shows, but all in all, I appreciate that feedback. It's those things that sort of fuel the passion to keep going on the content creation. I want to kind of close too with thanking, another show I do is Hobby Hotline. It's on Saturday mornings and soon to be Tuesday evenings. And we're expanding a host. But I want to thank all my hosts that, past and current, that I've done that show with. That show's a blast to do. It's fun. And, that's a team effort, no doubt. And I enjoy being on that show, being part of that show, and all my co-hosts on that show. Again, that's another thing that, fuels that passion and drives me to do that stuff. It's a lot of fun to do. So I want to thank all those folks as well. Like I said, even if they're no longer part of that show from the original cast, that they're all part of its history, and I want to acknowledge them. For those podcasters, again, not going to mention names in this case because there's numerous ones, but those that reached out to me, much like I reached out to Eric Norton and asked me for advice. I sort of tried to pay that forward as well. Thank you for even considering me someone you would ask and pick their brain up. So I just want to acknowledge those folks as best I could. Thank you out there as well. Without everybody, 38 years or whatever it is now in hobby, I lose track. I wouldn't be where I am today. So there you go. Remember, that again, that's where that tagline came from, right? All these stories, how they intertwine and lead me on this journey, which I'm still in the process, not done yet, right? Still going. So the hobby is the people. All right, thank you for listening to another episode of Hobby Quick Hits. Want to give out our social media, starting with our website, which is www.sportscardnationpodcast.com. Facebook, you can follow us at www.facebook.com/sportscardnationpodcast/. Twitter, we are at SportsCardNati1, so it's SportsCard NATI1. Instagram at SportsCardNationPodcast, or you can email the show hobbyquickhits@gmail.com. Again, thanks for listening. We'll see you next week.